All right, everybody, welcome in. Ready to dive deep today with strategic planning.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
We're taking a look at Lisa McFarland's strategic endeavors, creating the strategy.
Great document.
She's got a ton of experience, really knows her stuff when it comes to operations strategy, transforming businesses and organizations. And this document really lays out how to create a strategic plan from the ground up, from scratch.
Yeah, and you know what I really appreciate about her approach? There's this acknowledgement that there isn't a one-size-fits-all
Right.
when it comes to strategic planning. It has to be a blend. And I think that's so key, right? Because every organization, every business is facing such unique challenges and opportunities.
It's so true. And she starts right out of the gate, the first section, define the opportunity. And she throws a lot at you, I'm not going to lie. It's like Kaizen, SWOT analysis, JAPI analysis, the Hoshin Kanri method. And I'll be honest, my head was spinning a little bit. I was like, whoa, how am I going to use all these things at once?
Yeah, think of it as, instead of juggling, like you said, think about it as layering.
Yeah.
Each one of those tools, those frameworks, brings a completely different lens to helping you see what's actually going on.
Okay.
So you've got Kaizen, which is, really focused on continuous improvement.
Right.
How do we get just a little bit better each and every day? Then you layer on SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That classic business tool that stood the test of time for a reason.
It really has.
And then, okay, we've got to bridge the gap between where we are today and where we want to go. Enter GAP analysis.
Makes sense.
It gives you that strategic direction. And then to tie it all together, I love that she brings in Hoshin Kanri, which, that's our alignment piece.
Yeah.
That's how we get everybody rowing in the same direction.
Yes, that's such a good point, because one of the things that, in reading through this that really struck me was this emphasis on making sure that you're getting input from leaders at all levels of an organization. It's so easy, as you know, to be in those boardrooms, to be with the executive team, but she really stresses getting down to the front lines, talking to the people who are actually doing the work, who are working with the customers, who are dealing with the products and the services every single day, and getting their insights, because they're going to have a completely different perspective.
It's those people on the ground that have those golden nuggets of wisdom that you can't find if you don't go looking for it.
Right.
They're the ones who are seeing those grassroots initiatives bubbling up.
Absolutely.
And it's about, how do you capture those? How do you bring those to life and then potentially scale them across the organization?
And to kind of tie it all together, you've got to have that guiding star, that North Star, which McFarland talks about. And I think that resonated with me because I've seen so many times where organizations get a little bit scattered in their efforts because they don't have that clear vision of what they're actually working towards. And so people are doing things, they're doing things well, but it may not all be in service of the greater goal or the bigger mission.
Right. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there, right?
Exactly.
And so many times, strategic planning, it can feel very ambiguous. It can feel overwhelming. And without that North Star, there is that risk, but that you just end up with a collection of different projects versus this cohesive strategic direction.
Exactly. So we've defined the opportunity, we've got our North Star, now it's time to build the plan. And I love this, she gives us some really practical tools, right? She talks about the impact difficulty matrix, which I love because it's visual, right? You can see, like, okay, if we make this change, how much impact is it going to have? How difficult is it going to be? And so it allows you to start prioritizing, those high impact, low difficulty initiatives, which, hello, sign me up for those.
Yeah. And in the real world, when you're faced with limited resources, budget constraints, the impact difficulty matrix, that's where the rubber meets the road. It forces you to ask those really tough questions, right? Do we go for those quick wins that can demonstrate momentum and kind of get some early wins on the board? Or do we tackle this really complex, high impact, but maybe much more difficult project?
Yeah.
It forces you to think about it. And then, we've got to be realistic here.
Right.
Financial analysis has to be a part of the strategic planning process.
Of course.
We want to make sure we're thinking about return on investment. We're thinking about the financial feasibility of all of these things. And then we have those strategic portfolio management tools as well.
Right.
Thinking about where are we positioned in the market and how do these initiatives all play together?
Yes. And you can't just say, here's what we're going to do, and that's it.
Right.
Right. She talks a lot about program modeling.
Yep.
Really doing a deep dive into, What's the timeline going to be? What's the budget that needs to be associated with this? What resources are we going to need? How are we going to analyze and mitigate risk? And all of that, it's a lot, which is why, she transitions nicely into change management. Because even if you have the most brilliant strategy in the world, if you can't get people on board to actually implement it and do the work, it's useless.
Right. And that's where I think a lot of organizations fall down. They get the strategy, they don't get the people buy-in. And so it's just a plan that sits on a shelf, right?
Exactly.
So, in the document, McFarland, she does a really nice job of bringing up all sorts of proven models. ADKR, which is focused on helping individuals navigate through the change process. That's a really great model. The three-phase process, that's really about managing change at an organizational level. And, a lot of different ways to skin the cat when it comes to change management. But the important part is to have that framework.
Right. Have a plan to get people on board. One of the things that she advocates for, which I love, is these change champions. So these are the folks that are out there really championing the change, getting people excited about it, kind of rallying the troops to get things done. And that really ties in nicely to, her section on transform the leaders, because, you need leaders who are bought into this as well and who are able to, really walk the talk.
Yeah, and I love that she highlights that because transformational leadership is not just about, casting a vision from, high on the mountaintop. It is about being in the weeds with your team, empowering them, coaching them, navigating those challenges, side by side.
And speaking of challenges, she wraps up with a really important section on final considerations, because strategic planning is not something that you just do one time and then never look at again. It's a living, breathing thing. And she recommends reviewing your strategic plan every 12 to 16 weeks. Be flexible, be adaptable, because things change, the market changes, you learn new information. But what resonated with me, especially as I was reading through this, was just her emphasis on making sure that you're taking into account all of the factors, the internal factors, the external factors, the things that could potentially throw your plan off course, and really having, those keys to readiness, understanding the risks involved so that you're not caught off guard when things inevitably come up.
And that's really where the rubber meets the road again, right? Because it's one thing to read through this document, and it's another thing to say, okay, how does this actually show up in my work, in my team, in my organization? What are the things that we need to be mindful of that are going to be really critical to our success?
Absolutely. So to kind of wrap up here, she gives us a really solid framework for defining the opportunity, building that plan, making sure that we're managing change effectively, that our leaders are on board, that we're ready to adapt as needed. I'm curious, as you think about this, what's something that really stands out to you? What's something that our listeners should take away and really, ponder after they listen to this deep dive?
As I reflect on McFarland's work here, the thing I keep coming back to is really that concept of the change champion. Because sometimes it's easy to look at this and think, well, I'm not in a position of leadership, I can't drive this kind of large-scale change. But the reality is every single person, no matter where they sit within an organization, can be a change champion. Whether that's championing a new idea, supporting a colleague, being that positive voice, you have more influence than you think. And so my question to your listeners is, how can you show up as a change champion, even in a small way? And what kind of ripple effect could that create within your sphere of influence?
Such a good question to leave us with today.